That means we must be ready to start, I suppose. All right, looking around, any of the conference organizers, thumbs up? Thumbs up, great. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Thomas. I'm the class of 1961 professor of leadership education here at the United States Naval Academy. And I want to add my voice to the many voices, the chorus actually, that's welcomed you here to Annapolis in the U.S. Naval Academy over the course of the past day or so since you've gotten here. It's a great pleasure, not only for me personally, I think really for all of us that are associated with the Leadership Education and Development Division, to host all of you here. It's certainly a highlight on the academic year calendar for us to see all these high talent, high energy folks coming in from all across the nation. It certainly marks as one of those things that we absolutely look forward to. And if this morning's speaker, Mr. Kawasaki, is any indication of how the remainder is going to go, then this year will be as good as we actually hoped and planned it would be. What I'd like to offer, too, before we get into the real meat of this, and that's the four panelists, is make a quick observation as we start the panels. And this will be the first of three that you'll actually experience during the conference. And that is, since we're all either in the process of studying, perhaps teaching, thinking about leadership, some of us actively engaged in leadership, we know that there are certain qualities or attributes that make for good leaders. What they are oftentimes depends on the context of where you lead, how you lead, but they usually involve certain universal things such as integrity, courage, selflessness, willingness to kind of put the desires and the needs of others above your own, things like that, a sense of justice. And that truly makes for good leadership, when those types of things are practiced and habituated over time. It also seems to most of us who look at leadership as part of our daily routine, our job, that great leaders have all that, but somehow have a type of future orientation. They're able to see things out into the future, see needs for organizations and individuals, and project their own attributes of character and kind of skills, both intellectual skills as well as moral skills, project those things onto organizations and to others in order to kind of lead folks in a direction, a positive direction in the future. Then there's another category of folks that kind of go beyond great leaders, and they are, as has been termed in your program, trailblazers. Those are folks that are good leaders, have all those attributes. In fact, they are able to look into the future and guide individuals in that direction. They have that future orientation. So they actually perhaps are great leaders as well. Now, trailblazers, though, take us places we have not been before. They break new and interesting ground, as the name suggests. For this first panel this morning, I think it's safe to say that we've got four real trailblazers from each of their respective areas. It's going to make this conversation so interesting this morning. So the rules of engagement for this panel and the future panels that you'll have while you're here are pretty simple. I've asked each of our four panelists, after I introduce them very briefly, I've asked each of them to give us some brief comments to kind of open up this issue of trailblazing leadership. How to use a vision to project that onto organizations and other individuals, and use it to take those organizations and the individuals to places that perhaps no one has ever been before. So once they give their very brief comments on those topics, on that topic, afterwards we're going to try to allow maximum time for question and answer. And based on the question and answer that we had with Mr. Kawasaki, that certainly is going to be the highlight of all this. So the way we'll do is I'll start with my right hand, your left-hand side. Dr. Al Pierce of National Defense University, Admiral Ray Smith, who came in from Coronado, California, Air Force, Colonel Julie Nethercot from National Defense University as well, currently a student there, and Coach Herman Boone. All four have very distinct, diverse backgrounds to bring to this issue of trailblazing leadership, and I think it'll provide fascinating perspectives on where this all goes. So beginning with your left, I'll start with you, Dr. Al Pierce.
Thank you very much, Joe, and I particularly appreciate the opportunity to come back to the U.S. Naval Academy. Joe and I have worked on a number of projects. I met him when I worked here from 1998 to 2006, and we've been shipmates in a number of adventures, including at least one trip to Kazakhstan together to help them develop their professional military education system. It's a real privilege to be on the panel with Coach Boone. I'm a 30-year resident of Alexandria, and you're going to hear about what a remarkable figure he was. That was one of the things that attracted me to say yes to come to this. So it's good for you. Colonel Nethercot is a student at National War College, where I worked for 13 and a half years before I came here to the Naval Academy. And Admiral Smith I just met this morning, but he's done things that I just simply stand in awe of. Joe asked me to talk about visionary leadership in the context of what is now called the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership here. And as I thought about visionary leadership, I'm going to take a slightly different path, and that is to think about, not about visionary leadership as a solo activity, but encourage you to think about visionary projects. And it seems to me that visionary projects are different from visions, because a project has some fulfillment. And it seems to me that a visionary project, such as the Ethics Center here at the Naval Academy, involves at least sort of three types of people. One is the person with the vision. Second are the enablers, the people who give the wherewithal to actually bring this project to fruition. And then third, and interestingly enough, I think in some ways the least important, are the executors, the ones who actually bring it to fruition. The one who had the vision for the Ethics Center at the U.S. Naval Academy is sitting in the front row here, Admiral Chuck Larson, who during his second tour as superintendent made perhaps your major theme, sir. I would call it a renaissance of ethics and leadership at the Naval Academy. He didn't introduce it. It had been here since 1845. But it was time for a resurgence and renewed attention to it. Admiral Larson was the driver behind NE 203, the core ethics course that all the third-class midshipmen take. He revitalized the character development program here and had this vision of an ethics center here. And in fact, on the day before he had his change of command with Admiral Ryan, he called me and offered me one of the most wonderful opportunities in my life to be the founding director of what was then called the Center for the Study of Professional Military Ethics, now known as the Vice Admiral James B. Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership. And Admiral Larson had a vision, and had a vision statement for the center, which was, and I think I remember it verbatim, sir, to promote and enhance the ethical development of current and future military leaders through education, research, and reflection. And that was a vision that he had. But without enablers, that vision wasn't going to come to fruition. And there were many enablers, but the leaders in enabling were Roger and Linda Tetrall, who made a generous donation to the Naval Academy, which enabled Admiral Larson to offer me a job so that I would get a salary and not just have to be here as a volunteer. There are other enablers, by the way, for other projects, including Mitch and Linda Hart sitting down here in the front row, who were powerful enablers for this wonderful opportunity that we're having these days. But Roger and Linda Tetrall were the lead enablers. The Naval Academy class of 1964 really adopted me and the Ethics Center and raised enormous sums of money to support our work. And in my next to final month here at the Naval Academy, class of 64 paid me a distinct tribute, and that is they made me an honorary member of the class. And as I told them at the class luncheon, I got to do this the easy way without plebe summer. So I know that I'm among the lucky, and in the division of labor, I was happy to become an honorary member this way. There were other classes that joined in. Northrop Grumman Corporation was perhaps the lead among industry in supporting it, other corporations, other individuals. And among the other enablers were two people who gave me much guidance and wisdom along the way, because I'm not a Naval Academy, I'm not a real Naval Academy grad. I'm not a former naval officer. And that was Admiral Bud Edney and Admiral Hank Childs, who's sitting down here, who were both, they were the first two distinguished chairs of leadership when I was here. And they kept me more or less on the straight and narrow. And so without those enablers, I don't think I could have done and built what we did. The executors, the third part, were really two key, and it was a shared work. And one was Admiral Larson's successor, Vice Admiral John Ryan, who, when I got here to the Naval Academy in August of 1998, in fact, our final interview was with Admiral Larson and Admiral Ryan together. When I got here in August of 1998, Admiral Ryan said to me, "I'm glad you're here." He said, "I got here in June and I thought I was going to be the superintendent of the Naval Academy, but I've actually been working as the director of the Ethics Center." He said, "How about if you be the director of the Ethics Center and I be the superintendent of the Naval Academy?" And I said, "I think we can make that division of labor work, Admiral." But really, he and I working together translated that one-sentence vision statement and 4 empty rooms, which I got, into a concept and a set of programs for the Ethics Center here. And we developed that in thinking in concentric rings to make it an ethics resource for the Naval Academy, for the Navy and Marine Corps, and for the nation. And over my 7.5 years here, we developed a series of programs that touch each of those 3 concentric rings. But I want to close with the point I began with, because I want to allow plenty of time for questions from you, that one way to think about visionary leadership is as a solo activity. But you know, even Steve Jobs, whom everyone reads and talks about now, didn't do it all by himself. He may have had the idea for some of those products, but he didn't build them himself. So I would encourage you to think about visionary projects which involve someone with a vision, a set of enablers, and a set of executors who really carry out that vision using the resources that the enablers give them. I look forward to your questions, and before that, I look forward to my fellow panelists' remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Admiral Smith.
Well, to be very succinct about my career, I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1967 and retired in the end of year 2000, 31 years as a Navy SEAL and 2 years on the Navy destroyer when I first got out of here. So I'm going to say hello to all of you, the ladies and gentlemen that are here, the midshipmen, the students from the other schools. I'm very privileged to be here this morning. As I look at the young men and the young women here today, I see faces of our nation's emerging generation. I expect that each of you are reckoning with the fact that in a few short years, you'll be thrust into positions of leadership. While that position may be modest in character and impact, it is where all visionary leaders begin their career. Over the next several decades, you are destined to lead our society, and you will do so in an extraordinarily complex world. It will be up to you and others of your generation to lead our nation by devoting your energy, your wisdom, judgment, and vision to the betterment of our society. So our panel has been asked to spend a few minutes on visionary leadership as we see it, and offer thoughts on how each of you can become a visionary leader in your own right. Fortunately, there is no template for visionary leadership. What makes visionary leadership visionary is its ability to morph, to offer those who are determined to become a visionary leader many roads to follow. I know this because I was once a 26-year-old naval officer who strove to project a vision to my 14-man platoon during the war in Vietnam. Ultimately, I had the privilege to command all 2,300 SEALs. Even in that relatively large organization, I demanded that our young leaders think out of the box. For I believe that the fertile minds of young men and women are unencumbered by experience and therefore are a treasure trove of ideas, good ones and not so good ones, but always original and always creative. But for all of you, the most important characteristic of visionary leadership is relevant and passionate vision, not just a very good idea. The young officers who successfully complete the 6-month SEAL school have demonstrated visionary leadership. They are physically, mentally, and emotionally tenacious and driven to succeed. While you might expect physical tenacity to be the most challenging, it falls far below the mental and emotional tenacity. And dare I say, spiritual tenacity. Witness Mother Teresa, who I wager could not do one push-up. But she had a vision as a young woman, and through her remarkable commitment to that vision, she became arguably the most respected figure of the 20th century. So as you enter adulthood and find yourself in a position that demands visionary leadership, it won't require that you do push-ups, but rather it will call upon your mental and emotional energy to carry you through. Visionary leaders must do what is right, not what is expedient. In the SEALs, we have a saying, when faced with 2 courses of action in your life, always take the one that's personally most uncomfortable, for it will be the right one. I'm sure all of you can look at your lives and recall times when you chose an expedient solution, only to find that it may have been good for keeping you in your comfort zone, but it did not support your vision. Visionary leaders are not afraid to collaborate. In the SEALs, every mission is planned with input from all 14 platoon members. This sends a powerful message to the members of the platoon, to wit, they are respected for their knowledge and wisdom. Visionary leaders are also blessed with a leadership prism that points down. They understand the fact that a great deal of a leader's success is based on the success and loyalty of those working for him or her. When I returned from Desert Storm, I was summoned to the Pentagon to brief senior officials. It was quite an ego builder, but I was reminded of a Navy saying regarding leaders. and what they think of themselves. It goes like this. It's not the lofty sail, but the unseen wind that moves the ship. It's not the lofty sail, but the unseen wind that moves the ship. In my case, I realized without the heroism of my men who believed in my vision, I would not have been successful. Another question was asked of our panel. How does one muster the strength to defend the validity and merit of one's vision? Well, I believe each of you in your lives will answer that in your own way. But frankly, I believe that your vision cannot raise you to a level of energy and passion capable of pursuing it, then it is, in most cases, not a vision worth following. Another question of our panel was, how does visionary leadership differ from traditional leadership? I believe that in today's world, we are beginning to realize that business, education, technology, and medicine, for example, are simply evolving at a rate at which traditional management cannot keep up. Today, new ideas are turned into billion-dollar companies at lightning speed. Conversely, Eastman Kodak, a revered company in our nation, is closing its doors after 130 years. However, its rival, Fuji, began several years ago to remake its company. It will continue to remain afloat, albeit doing other things than manufacturing film for cameras. That is a typical example of a company that had a vision and the courage to divest itself of what had been its most profitable and cherished product. The lesson here is that visionary leaders must be prepared to act proactively by restructuring a vision to challenge the changing world. To the students here this morning, I will confide with you one aspect of visionary leadership which at a senior level I missed. That is, visionary leaders must always challenge existing assumptions. You must always challenge existing assumptions. When all of you begin your careers and as you continue in your careers, it is imperative that you routinely challenge the assumptions which underpin your vision. For assumptions can be your best friends or worst enemies, especially if you are succeeding in your career. Or if you are successful and visionary, you may have a tendency to settle in and stay the course. Most often, this manifests itself as complacency. My experience with not challenging assumptions took place 16 years ago while commanding the Navy SEALs. Specifically, I had never given a thought to having one of our students die in SEAL training, especially during Hell Week, the 120-hour event, which is our rite of passage. I felt comfortable about that event because for over 50 years, we had never had a student lose his life in Hell Week. So I assumed it would continue. The odds were with me. But on a Wednesday night in 1995, I was informed that we had a young SEAL student, a Naval Academy graduate, in the hospital with necrotizing fasciitis, a flesh-eating disease. As many of you know, it is a rare but virulent disease that found as either a strep or a staph infection. It can cause death in 36 hours. Fortunately, the doctors at Balboa Hospital saved his life. But on that one night, a vision held by me and all the previous SEAL commanders reaching back for half a century ended. So the lesson for all of you is regardless of how successful your vision may be, your world will change continuously. What worked today may not work tomorrow. In closing, I want to reemphasize the importance of collaboration and a leader's willingness to call upon the men and women he or she will lead. Your vision must be their vision. So when you finally reach that day when you swallow hard and begin to use your talents to inspire a new vision, do not try to go it alone, for it won't be easy, let me assure you. Remember what we say in the SEALs, the only easy day was yesterday. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Admiral Smith. Colonel Nethercot.
Well, again, I'll repeat what my other panelists have said, which is thanks to the Academy for having me today. It's truly an honor to be here amongst all these young leaders from a variety of colleges and institutions, and to be on stage with these gentlemen here this morning. And you're probably going to hear some similar thoughts and themes from each of us, and hope that sparks some good questions for the Q&A. I'm just going to hit really my top 5 things for visionary leadership or leadership at a lot of different levels. And I'll start off by saying I've been incredibly blessed. I have had the opportunity to lead Marines, platoon commander, company commander, and a battalion commander, a year of that in Afghanistan, which I just got back from last year, and be a part of the transition of the female engagement teams in Afghanistan from where they used to be to where they are now. So you'll hear me talk about those things, but from all of those lessons come these five things that are really important to me. And again, serving these Marine sailors has been the greatest honor of my life, and I truly mean that. So these are my top 5. And you've heard people say these before, but you got to go in and set a bold goal. It's something that hasn't been done before. And you do that by looking forward in time a little bit. What do you want the organization to be like when you leave it? So you can look from that perspective, or you can take it from the opposite perspective, which is looking back on your time in that particular organization or your life. What do you want your legacy to be? And so find that goal, and you do that by assessing where you are when you enter an organization from the beginning. A true, honest assessment, figuring out who the players are and where that organization is right now. So that's your first step. Do that. Assess your situation. Set a bold goal that's kind of out there a little bit. That's going to test you. Not so pie in the sky you will never achieve it, but make it an aggressive goal. Secondly, which you've heard these gentlemen talk to, and you're definitely going to hear him speak to, which is build a team. No one on this panel has done it alone. We'll tell you that. We have been surrounded by great people and great mentors and people that have shaped our lives. And it's the same thing when you're a visionary leader. It's all about people. It's all about people you find in your organization that really take your organization to the next level. Finding those talents, those skills, putting the right people in the right positions, and then training, resourcing them, and then sometimes as a leader, getting out of their way and just letting the momentum take its course. And we have one of the female engagement team leaders here today that showed up, Captain Emily Naslin. So you'll hear me talk about finding the right people for the right time. Captain Emily Naslin was instrumental to where the female engagement teams in Afghanistan are today. So she's one that I would encourage y'all to speak to on the break. And then the last part of that one is just creating a good command climate is what we call it in the military, where those ideas can be shared, because I'll tell you, a lot of the ideas, the best ideas, come from that 21-year-old Lance Corporal. You just need to hear it and create an environment where those ideas can come up. And that really will increase your momentum within your organization as well, once you get to that position where you created that environment where those ideas come up. Third, articulate your vision. It's great if it's in your head, but it won't go anywhere until you articulate it. And being able to get that message to resonate within all levels of your organization. There are lots of techniques to do that. I do that myself, and then I empower, I had 6 great majors as a battalion commander, and they kind of became the disciples. And they went out, and once you unleash them, I mean, any ideas that I had, they far surpassed it with just taking it to the next level. So articulating the vision, and then just doing leadership by walking around. I'm not a fan of leadership by email. I don't do it. I like to walk around and talk to the Marines and talk to the lieutenants and captains. And that's how you figure out and really get that sense as a leader. Is the message resonating? Or is everybody pulling on the same rope to get the organization to the next step? So that's the third thing, articulate your vision. Fourth is, we've talked about a little bit already, which is be open to the opportunities that come your way. And that means kind of coming above the fray and the noise level every now and again to see the other opportunities that may be out there. It's a very dynamic environment in all of these organizations that each of the 4 of us have been a part of. So as that visionary leader, you got to be able to sense those opportunities that come your way and change direction if you need to. Again, whether it was as a battalion commander or working with Emily Naslin with the female engagement teams, those opportunities came at us left and right, and you got to be able to seize that day and take that momentum to the next step. So, and lastly, I'll close with, regardless of what level of leader that you are, at the end of the day, leadership's all about character. It really is. And that is, again, regardless of what level you are, but leading from the front in all aspects of your life is hugely important, especially if you're going to become a visionary leader. Trust and credibility. They have to buy into the vision, and they have to buy into you as a leader to get them to that end state. So you have to lead from the front in all aspects of your life. And that happens daily. That's not an overnight event. That's what you do in the darkness of the morning when you're going for the early morning run before everybody else is getting up. That's reading extra about some topics to make yourself a better leader. It happens every single day. So I would encourage all of you as young leaders to remember, it takes time. It's a daily activity. And the last point on that is be strong. Have moral courage. If you're going to be a visionary leader, you're going to have some folks that, I call them the dream stealers, that come along, the I can't crowd. But stay focused on your dream and stay strong to it, and be bold enough to have the courage to go out and reach for it. So with that, hopefully that teed up some good Q&A questions. And with that, I'll turn you over to the inspirational coach to my left.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, your wonderful hospitality here at this historical academy. Let me welcome all of our midshipmen, cadets, faculty, friends, and young leaders from all over the country and guests to the United States Naval Academy Leadership Conference series today. Thank you. Thanks to Lieutenant Seymour and Mr. John Foley, and especially Midshipman Lieutenant Commander Corey Buck for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, excuse me, I'm a little hoarse, for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to spend some quality time with some people who are going to make a difference in this world. My father used to tell me that, boy, nobody will ever control the break of day. And when day does break, if you do not plan to make a difference, then take your butt back to sleep. and don't forget the dream, because dreams have no expiration date. So I'd like to thank everybody involved for this wonderful opportunity for me to spend some time with some young people that are going to make a difference. Thank you all for your gracious hospitality. And again, good morning. My name is Coach Boone, and many of you probably know me by now as the real inspiration of that blockbuster movie, Remember the Titans, starring, and he told me to tell you, 2-time Academy Award winner Denzel Washington. I realize this now why so many of you showed up this morning. I heard that Midshipman Lieutenant Commander Corey Buck put the word out that Denzel Washington was coming. And I'm truly sorry that your first choice was Denzel Washington. And he said to tell you that since he's busy making a film, that he's sorry that he could not be here. But you should be glad you got me, because you got the only one that's better looking than Denzel anyway. I truly believe that if there's any midshipman or cadet out there that believes that, then you certainly don't belong here. You probably belong up at all of your common foe over at Notre Dame. You know, I don't have very many witty jokes to tell like most sophisticated coaches you're probably used to at this academy. And although I believe this lecture is a very serious lecture, I truly appreciate your sense of humor. But before I get started in my little introduction, I would like to introduce a couple people, if you don't mind, people who are making a difference in this world, and a man who is a visionary leader in the state of Maryland. Please welcome my friend, Mr. Robert Bob Wallace. Bob, would you stand up, please? Thank you very much. You know, ladies and gentlemen, because of your strong commitment to honor and courage and strength, and I'm just simply honored and proud to introduce also to you a young man who, as one of the original Titans, showed the world his commitment to character, courage, strength, diversity, and a willingness to transcend narrow-minded thinking, and that's a leader. I take great pride in presenting to you an original Titan of that movie, Remember the Titan. Please welcome my former football player, retired Commander Jerry Buck. Jerry, will you stand up, please? Jerry is the father of Lieutenant Commander Corey Buck, who is a student here, a cadet here, who twisted my arm and almost broke my neck to be here. I came all the way from Florida. But let me say to you that this man, Jerry Buck, along with his teammates, showed the world how one can overcome that fear of diversity. And they showed the world how one could celebrate their differences rather than allow their differences to become a problem to be solved. And this is why that movie, Remember the Titans, was written, not because they won a state championship. So therefore, your theme today of leadership cannot be more important than it is today, because great leaders today are in a great demand and yet a short supply. But And everybody wants to succeed, I know, and it makes sense to succeed. But why don't people succeed? I believe there are three reasons. One, deficiency of skills. Two, lack of desire. And three, poor leadership. And contrary to some current political rhetoric, leadership is indelibly linked to character. And this is one of the greatest things that our young people, I find, get from the Naval Academy, and that's character. Because leadership depends on having a unique vision and making strategic choices. In 1971, I was named head football coach over a legendary white coach with a steadfast following and a popularity second to none. We had to learn to put our differences aside, and we had to learn to be leaders of these unfocused young boys. Because in our country, just a few years ago, young people, our rituals of separativeness were better developed than our rituals of togetherness. And Coach Yost and I had to find ways and means to become leaders of these young and unfocused boys so that they were able to march throughout the state of Virginia in the 70s, battling their way through each conference to the state championship, second in the nation in the United States. Because these young boys who did not like each other, they found a way to talk to one another. And by talking to one another, they found a way to accept the soul of each other rather than reject each other based on the color of their skin. And I truly believe that these young men are partially responsible for the diverse picture here at this academy that could only have been painted by the hand of God. Just take a look at you now and look at you 50 years ago when our rituals of separativeness were better developed than our rituals of togetherness. We have students here at the Academy today that 50 years ago could not be here. And I think because of these young men like Commander Jerry Buck, who fought throughout his high school career to help mold a group of angry and unfocused boys into a dynamic winning football team. But more than anything else I am proud of, these young men who learned to put their differences aside and accept the soul of a person who did not look like they looked, they were able to march throughout the state of Virginia, and they put their differences aside and mold each other into caring and responsible citizens of their chosen communities today, and fathers of students here at the Naval Academy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you for this gracious opportunity to be here at the Naval Academy today on in this conference on leadership, because we all are leaders. Whether you know it or not, we all are leaders. And if you're walking down the street and looking over your shoulder and nobody's behind you, then by God, you ain't no leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Boone. Well, obviously, we've got a broad array of expertise and perspectives, whether that be in academia, sports, the military, what have you. There's certain themes I think that we kind of draw from all four of those brief presentations. One of the unfortunate parts of my job as a moderator is to ask the panelists to keep their comments rather brief. It's unfortunate, mainly for all of us, because any one of these panelists would provide a fascinating 1-hour presentation. But we forego that opportunity to see them speak for an hour in order to give you the opportunity to ask what you found particularly inspiring or interesting about any of the comments that you've heard today. So if you would please make your way. If you have a question, you have some issues, this is kind of the heart of this. We want to get directly to questions from all of you, for our panelists. I ask you to please step up to the microphones. Microphones both on the top deck, I see a couple of locations, and we've got them here in the aisles.
Morning. My name is Abraham. I'm from Bucknell University. I wanted to say thanks again for coming. This has been wonderful so far. My question is, I'm only 21. I'm pretty young, and I can understand what it takes to muster up the, courage inside of yourself to take a risk. But I just can't imagine what it's like to take, 5, 10, 20 people, whatever you have you underneath. Maybe you're in charge of an organization that's been around for hundreds of years. What's it like to take all that and put it at risk to move forward? How do you muster up the courage to do that? Not just risk yourself, but everyone underneath you.
Okay. Question from Abraham there?
Could you repeat?
Sure. Abraham, if I understood that, since you're so young, you're an aspiring leader, you want to know how to bring together a group of 15 or 16 or more, inspire them in such a way as to call forth great things from them.
What I'm asking is, what's it like to risk the people underneath you to move forward? Because when you take risks as a leader,
Right.
You're not alone. You've got people who are also on the line.
All right, central issue being risk in that. Takers? Admiral Smith.
I have a distinct memory of exactly what you've just asked, if I understand what your question was. In Vietnam, I was a platoon commander, so I was with my men. Okay, so I went out and did everything that they did. But when I was a captain in the Navy and I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I didn't go out on those. I sent young men out. And so I guess we had over 270 missions during that 40 days. And I had men all over the place doing various things. And it was the most stressful thing I've ever been through, because every night we would send them out to do something. And I knew that if something went wrong, I was accountable, because I was going to write a letter to their mother or their spouse, and I knew that what they were doing was at my best judgment. Excuse me, my best judgment. In other words, I was making the best judgment to do the right thing and make sure they were very effective at what they did, but also that they were protected. But I don't think I've ever been through a part of my life where I was totally unable to do that, to help them, because I was back on the base waiting for them to come back. And I found that to be the most stressful thing I've probably ever been done in my life. So it is very, very difficult to do, and it transcends all the services. Every senior officer, senior leader has the same feeling when he sends or she sends men and women out to combat. It is very, very difficult.
Yeah, I would just add on what the Admiral, we call it weight of command, is what the military refers to it as, and it's something we take very, very seriously. You're responsible to those moms and dads out there to take care of their sons or daughters. So you try to mitigate the risk as much as you can by training and resourcing them and equipping them best you can. But at the end of the day, you make sure the mission's a valid mission that you're going to put lives on the line for. But anytime you put a Marine on a helo, or you send out a convoy, or a female engagement team goes out on patrol, there's a risk. And you do a lot of walking around and pacing as a leader sometimes, but at the end of the day, you train them right, and at the end of the day, if the mission needs to get accomplished, you've done everything you could for them as a leader, and you made the best judgment that you could before you put the risk out there. Does that make sense?
Well, I've not been in the military, unfortunately. I've always wanted to go. I was probably too young for Korea and too old for Vietnam, and still old. But I found that one of the greatest gifts that God could ever give a human being is the ability to make a decision. You can choose to procrastinate, and you can choose to lead, or you can choose to follow. But remember, as a leader, one of the greatest things about a leader is that he is capable of making a decision. And I've always taught my children, one of the greatest gifts that God can give you is the ability to make a decision. You can choose to hate, you can choose to love, but by God, support your decision. And that's the greatest attribute of a leader, is to support your decision. And as a football coach, You only have about 25 seconds to make a decision between plays that will probably result in a win or loss. But then, if you could call the right play all the time, you'll be greatest coach in the world. You're going to make mistakes, but support your own decision and never fail. Never be afraid to fail. I'm sure somebody in your few years of education told you that Einstein flunked math in the 4th grade. Winston Churchill failed the 7th grade 3 times. So don't be afraid to fail or face failure. When our astronauts landed on the moon, they only had 6 seconds of fuel left for this successful venture. So believe in what you believe. And I've always told the Titans, don't ever say anything you don't believe, and don't ever believe anything you're not willing to say. So stand up and speak up, stand up and speak out about whatever you believe in. Because Vince Lombardi said to believe is to have faith. But by God, watch your belief, because your belief become your character. And never, ever forget the fact that all leaders are indelibly linked to character. Thank you.
Admiral.
You know, in the SEALs we train to failure. We pump them up for 25 weeks, and then where they think they're indomitable, and then we put them in a situation where they fail. There's a reason for that. And the great Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn, anybody remember him? He was a good old boy and had a lot of quips about failure and all kinds of other things. And somebody asked him once about failure, and what should you learn something from failure? And he said, it went like this. He said, you should never fail more than once in any one thing, because there's no wisdom gained in the second kick of the mule. And that's what you have to remember. You're going to do it once in your life, the point. You're going to have a situation where you will fail at some point in time. But you'll learn from that. That's the, I guess, the benefit of failure, and we all go through that.
Thank you, Abraham. Ma'am.
Hi, good morning. My name is Adriana Martinez from Southern Methodist University. I have a question about 2 ideas that have come up now in our first speaker and in this panel session. This ability, I think, Rear Admiral, you said it, the ability to morph. And at the same time, there's the contrasting need for conviction that you just referenced. How is it that you can, I suppose, balance the two, really have that ability to morph and adopt new ideas, but at the same time maintain conviction when necessary?
Well,
resilience in the
I
face
think one of the things that certainly we really inculcate in our young men is that to believe that they can find a way. And when I mentioned about morphing, I was talking in the context that if you're a young business person or somebody moving into life, there are a lot of ways to go, and so it isn't like there's only one answer to everything. And so the beauty of it is if you use your creativity and you work with other people and you collaborate, you can come up with 2 or 3 options and you're working down. So that's what I was talking about there.
Coach, if you weren't able to hear that, the ability to be flexible.
I must be getting old, losing my hearing, because I'm not able to hear. Please repeat those questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the ability to be flexible in the face of changing conditions, and how to balance that when certain things have to be done. The issue is flexibility. Okay.
Well, all leaders must be flexible, because you're agents of change. And to make change, you must be flexible. You're an agent that supports change, but more than anything else, you're a person that supports your decision. So, things will change, and adversity will take place. And I taught the Titans how to overcome adversity. I told them a joke about the blind man who walked down the street with a seeing-eye dog, and the dog took him across the street against the light. And for some reason, people were swerving all over the street to prevent hitting this blind man. And when he got across the street, he gave his dog a biscuit. And this little old lady looked at him like he had lost his mind. She walked up to him and said, "Sir, I don't mean any harm, but why would you give this dog a biscuit? This dog took you across the street against the light. He almost got you killed." The blind man said, "Ma'am, I don't mean any harm. but I only gave him that biscuit to find out where his head is so I can kick him dead in the hind part. So if you're ever going to be a leader, you got to be flexible, because everything is not going to be right, everything is not going to be wrong. You're going to have to face the music and be flexible. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. I mean, I'm just a football coach, you know. What do I know? I've never been on a ship in my life.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts on where to draw the line?
I can't talk.
Tough act to follow.
I can't talk. I'll leave it at that.
That's great.
We need to get him on a ship over lunch, though.
No way.
We can arrange it.
I just learned, be careful, don't accept the biscuit.
All right, terrific. Yes, sir.
I'm Isaac Inyungarai from the University of Nebraska, and Admiral, you mentioned that your officers undergoing SEAL training went through very arduous physical, emotional, and mental trials, and the physical aspect is obviously the most tangible and it's most easily to prepare yourself for, but what advice would any of you give for the mental and emotional aspects of preparing for a leadership role?
Right. Physical is the most direct, certainly in terms of leader development. As for the intellectual, perhaps moral aspect, what's the best advice?
I'll tell you that you and I was the director of SEAL training for 2 years as a younger officer, and then I spent a lot of time there when I was the admiral. And you can't look at a young man showing up there and understand that that person's going to make it. He can have the biggest biceps in the world and run like the wind. It's really nothing. It's really nothing. Because if you don't have it inside, and so I used to try to motivate them. I said, find something that you really, really cherish. If it's your mom, if it's your pet dog, if it's your chaplain, find something that will help you, bring you along through this time. Because no one goes through life alone. No one goes through SEAL team alone. I'll tell you a great story if I have time to do it. We swim with swim buddies. We have a swim buddy. Everybody swims and dives with one other person. I was the class leader in my class. Annapolis graduate, captain of the track team here. Grew up in California, good in the water. And my swim buddy, since I was the class leader, was a 19-year-old young high school graduate from Michigan who had never been in the ocean before he came to SEAL training. He was the worst athlete in our class. So they gave it to the class leader to take care of. So one day, and only one day, did I ever think about quitting. Okay? Think about quitting. And so it was a 1.5 mile swim. Wasn't a bad swim in terms of distance, but it was horrible surf. It took us 20 minutes to get out. 18 kids quit in the swim. We get to the mile point, and I was drinking salt water, vomiting and all this stuff. And my swim buddy just going along. And I said to him, Jimmy, I'm not sure I'm making that last half mile, man. I'm dying. And he said, sir, don't worry about it. Roll all on your back. He said, roll your back, kick your fins, and I'll talk you back. And he loved to talk. He was always in trouble for talking. But that day, a 19-year-old kid, to your point, a high school graduate who had never been on the ocean before, helped out the class leader. Because you're always going to have bad days. You are. You're going to have them. But part of that, and the answer to that, is you build swim buddies in your life. You build them. The men and women who you can rely upon. And that's very important, what we do.
Dr. Pierce, on the moral development, perhaps.
I was thinking, as I was listening to the Admiral, after hearing your question of an anecdote, a true story that occurred here, I had one of the many great privileges and pleasures I had working here 7.5 years was I got to know quite well Chief Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson, who took the initiative to stop the My Lai massacre. And we invited him here several times, and two things I'll just share with you from that. I mean, one is, if you look at the background of Chief Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson, who describes himself as just a simple country boy who liked to fly helicopters, and you look at the background of Lieutenant Rusty Cowley, who was the infantry platoon leader on the ground, they were two peas in a pod. They came from similar backgrounds. And to this day, and probably forever, it will remain a puzzle to me how on that same morning, one of them said, waste them all, and the other one said, this is wrong. I'm going to do something to stop it. And when I asked Hugh, where did this, and he didn't take any 203 or any ethics course that any of us in this room taught, and he said, that's just the way I was raised. My parents told me taught me how to recognize right and wrong, and when you recognize something wrong, do something to stop it. So that's the first part about taking initiative. It came from inside. It was nothing that anyone handed. He dug way deep down inside that morning over the village of My Lai. Second, he landed his helicopter between some Vietnamese who had run into a bunker running from an American infantry platoon. And when he landed the helicopter, he turned, and we had him here as well one of the occasions, he turned to his door gunner, Larry Colburn, and said, if the Americans open fire on the Vietnamese, you open fire on the Americans. And I said to Larry, how old were you that morning? He said, I was just shy of 19. And he was ready to do that. And he had done it because of something the colonel said earlier. They had forged a team. And it wasn't Hugh Thompson alone who did it, but it was the team and the spirit and the commitment and the honor and the courage that he had inspired that day. And so it comes from a variety of sources. It comes from deep inside, and it comes from having a leader that you trust, even at the ultimate risk of your life.
Other thoughts?
I'll just say, keying off of the Admiral's comments, the doctor's comments, Dr. Pierce on the end, is nothing can replace as realistic training as you can get, and making that for your team, or whether it's a scrimmage on the football field, or you're leading a battalion, or the female engagement team's going out, as realistic as you can to what someone's going to experience, whether it's in combat or in a big game. Get those stressors, start to inoculate that, build that foundation, so you start to build a little mental endurance. And as a battalion commander, I was famous for taking my battalion to places they had never been on Camp Pendleton, because I never wanted them to learn, because we didn't know what Afghanistan was going to be like. So why should we go to the same training area in Camp Pendleton we've been going to for the last 3 years? Pick something different, something new, give them mission type orders, throw as much as I could at them to get them to start to react and to build that team, because I needed them to be a team in Afghanistan when I was out at some FOB. I needed those 6 majors to act on the guidance that I've given them. So the way we did that back in Pendleton, it goes back to practicing what you want to play like in the game. I mean, those old fundamentals of athletes so ring true in so many aspects, but as realistic as you can get it. Bad weather, little bit of sleep, you name it. I mean, Marines we kind of like that stuff anyway, but that's how I have found it works for me in the Marine Corps anyway, to build that mental endurance. And you quickly see when the heat is on who will step up to the plate, and so do their peers. And they learn a lot about each other as a team, and they find that swim buddy that's going to be with them through thick and thin. So as realistic training as you can provide somebody, regardless of your organization. So with that, I'm sure the coach has something on that one.
Well, I simply say, young man, everybody wants to be successful, but a lot of people don't know what success is. I truly believe that success is only a word that comes in front of hard work in a dictionary. And hard work means preparations. All coaches have to prepare. All coaches have to prepare to win. You don't prepare to lose. You might learn to accept losing. That's like kissing your sister. But you don't. I'm off the hook this morning, man. You must be prepared. I asked retired Commander Jerry Block coming down the road this morning. I said, Jerry, why is it, all of these physics and math courses are required at the Naval Academy? Seems like to me, just go on and take a few math courses and going out to sea and blow the people up, He said, well, Coach, he's a real serious guy, typical Navy. He said, well, Coach, do you think that we could fire a big gun in rolling seas? I ain't never thought about it. It takes physics to hit the target when the boat's going like this, and the gun's going like this, and the target's over there. It takes physics, it takes math, it takes preparation. And this is why, and for the first time in my life, he just made me feel like, well, you're right. All this preparation is meant for the eventuality to fire a gun or something when a ship is rolling and you're in the dark, and the physics of things moving, and all of that. I never thought about it. But preparations produces success. And without preparations, you'll never be successful. And oh, by the way, when you mention a team, mention Coach Boone's definition of a team. A team is a group of people with one vision, with one objective, and by God, one heartbeat. And if you have anybody on your team with two heartbeats, kill that other sucker.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Not literally. Daphne.
Good morning, Midshipman Daphne Williams, 24th Company. I actually have a question for Colonel Nethercot. Ma'am, in what ways as battalion commander did you encourage those lance corporals to voice their ideas and combat the dream stealers?
Okay, so how to reach in an organization of, for my battalion's 1,175. So how do I reach down and hear those ideas from the lance corporals, the young leaders? Okay. Well, a couple of different ways. I talked a little bit about leadership by walking around. I'm a big fan of, like I said, walking around talking to people. And then once we articulated the vision where the battalion was going to go for those 2 years, I met with the majors, then I met with the senior enlisted, and then I met with lieutenants, and then I met with the NCOs, and then I met with lance corporals and PFCs. So I met with each of those kind of target audience, because each of those target audiences have a particular role to play in a battalion, and each of them has so much to bring. So that's how I did it. I actually set everybody down and said, hey, this is what you heard me say in the base theater the other day. What does that mean to you? So trying to do the Mars-Venus thing. You know, it sounds clear in your head, but sometimes you need to have someone say it back to you. And it was amazing what they came up with. They're like, man, we heard you say you want the battalion to take, in my case, communications network to this level. We think there's some ways we can do that, because those are the Marines that are doing the hands-on type of work every day. And they came up with ideas and schools that I'd never even heard of. Man, if you send us to this school, I think we're going to be better positioned to do whatever, virtual servers. All those that are in networks are probably like, okay. But that's how I did it. So I actually went down and talked to them, set them all down. Hey, what did you get from it? Got some feedback. And then I'd walk around every week, walk around every company, every platoon, walk in and amongst, stop and ask them what they were doing. So just basic leadership 101, and that's how I received an immense amount of feedback. And once they knew that there was an environment where that feedback was received, I tell you, it was unstoppable. You just tapped into an amazing mind of a 20-year-old and what they can really come up with. So, and you'd be surprised what they tell you. Sometimes very surprised at what they'll tell you. But you take that all in, and that's how I did it. I mean, these other gentlemen may have some other techniques, but that's what worked for me.
It's a great saying about being a boss, being in charge. And in the military, we're pretty hierarchical, and so you get to be an animal. That's pretty much all you have to do is give an order. Somebody's going to salute it. But there's a great saying about unilateralism. Unilateralism produces outcomes, not solutions, right? You want outcomes, you can get them when you have stars on, or when you even have captains or lieutenants on. But you probably get outcomes, not solutions, because we all assimilate information differently, every one of us. And the more people you can bring in to help you make the decision, ultimately you have to make the decision as an officer. You have to make it. But doing it by yourself, you have one brain, one process of using that brain, and you'll come up with an outcome. But it won't be, in some cases, the right one. So that's what really drove me to be very collaborative in the SEALs.
Great. Thanks, Daphne.
Thank you. Great question.
Good morning to the panel. I'm Midshipman First Class Locks, representing the Naval Academy. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Dr. Pierce, in your opening remarks, you talked about enablers and executors. I was hoping that the panel could discuss experiences that you've had where these individuals perhaps had different ideas of visionary leadership than what you saw, and how you inspire these individuals to support your visionary leadership.
I began everybody on the same team.
That's right. One of the things I learned here, it's a small boat and everybody rows, and it works best if everybody's rowing in the same direction. I think that rather than an example from me, I'll give an example of an answer to your question. And it revolves around Admiral Childs, who's down here in the front row. My second year here, I think, Admiral, your first year here, Admiral Ryan, the superintendent, asked you to chair a group of senior leaders to review all of the ethics, character, and leadership programs at the Naval Academy. And we met in the Commandant's conference room, and we put yellow stickies up on them. And there were a gazillion of them, actually. I mean, there were quite a few. And there were strong views in the room about sort of prioritizing and clustering and so on and so forth. And I've had the opportunity to tell this story before in Admiral Childs' presence. But he was far and away the senior person in the room. But he listened. He was open to suggestions from everybody. He built consensus. He didn't drive to his chosen outcome. I like that distinction. So you came up with solutions to answer the mail for the superintendent, but it would have been very easy for him to say, I've got an outcome, and I've got the right outcome in mind, and drive us to that. But he didn't do that. He resisted that, and really became a team leader and a builder of consensus. So that's a better example that comes to mind right now than anything I've ever done. I think you've got a living example of how best to do that, just standing about 5 or 6 feet in front of you, midshipman.
What else would like to take that?
Now, I like to go back to the young lady that said, how do you learn from those at the bottom of the totem pole? I remember in 1971, when the Titans were behind with 1 minute and 5 seconds to go, I had run out of everything I know, to be honest. And I just didn't know what else to call. Clock was ticking down, and Sunshine, the quarterback, came, a 16-year-old kid, comes over and says, Coach, what do you think? I said, what do you think? I didn't know what to think. How are you going to come from behind 75 yards away with 1 minute and 5 seconds to go? Third down, I think it was, Jared. Second down or something. I said, what do you think, son? He said, well, I think they're slanting to the strong side of the field, and we've been running to the strong side of the field all night. Let's set the strong side of the field to the short side of the field, put this little boy named Frankie Glasgow to the back side of the field, and cross block with Jerry Buck. And I said, okay, try it. And they ran 75 yards and won the game. It took me 16 years to learn this offense, and all of a sudden I'm taking a suggestion from a 16-year-old kid that won the game, that produced the movie Remember the Titans. Without that touchdown, there would be no Remember the Titans. It would be Forget the Titans. So I'm saying to you that, you know, you have to sometimes listen to those who on the bottom of the totem pole, because we don't have it all. Probably we have less than what they do, but they're just afraid to tell you. But it's important that you listen to people, and that's one of the true qualities of a leader, is to be able to listen and yet make decisions and support your decisions, young lady. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of a leader who was very, very busy and got into his own sort of routine, and that was me in Desert Shield. We went right after Hussein had invaded. We were there like 9 days later. And we worked 41 straight days. And I had guys all over Saudi Arabia, up on the border, and we were really busy. So I had a Master Chief Petty Officer who was my senior Master Chief, and we were good friends, had been for years. But he's one of these guys that never said a lot, but when he said something, you listen. So we're driving back to my bosses, 41 days, my men have been working, no days off. He said, hey boss, he always called me boss when he was in a good mood. He said, hey boss, he said, you ever thought about giving the guys a day off? And I said, well, I don't know, Master Chief. I said, we're all busy and I got all this stuff going on. So, but I know this guy really well, so I said, you don't ask those things just to ask him. He said, well, no, I think you need a day off. And I said, well, I don't know. So he came up with a saying, a comment that stopped me in my tracks. He said, you know, I was 48 years old at that time. He said, you know, Captain, he said, here's the reason I think we should have a day off. Because remember now, you're 48 years old and the captain of the Navy. And the average age of our men are 24 years old. That's touche, Master Chief. I was looking through the eyes of a Navy captain, not the eyes of a 24-year-old third-class petty officer. So this is what happens. So that's why extra people who part of your whole program as a boss, you're going to rely on them because they think things differently, and you don't always see everything as a boss. I never forgot that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Elaine, and I'm presenting College of Administration at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My question would be, what is the best way to work with other visionary leaders? I mean, when a group of visionary leaders come together, that's a whole nother new group. And in this group, all the members are already leaders with probably different leadership styles. What is the, I guess, visionary way to work with all the visionary leaders in order to bring out the best?
Particularly if they all have high levels of ego and
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like that. Eagles don't flock together. Right. All right. Does everybody understand that question? What to do
Gingerly.
when ego is
Gingerly
a
is the
significant
way.
part of this? Eagles tend not to flock together. How do you get large egos together to share a common purpose? Who would like to take that?
Let me offer a quick thought. And I have not worked my way through the popular biography of Steve Jobs, but I think he qualifies as a visionary leader. And there were other visionary leaders in Apple, but the sense you get from, I got at least from the excerpts I've read, it wasn't a whole lot of fun with a lot of those visionary leaders working together. And the clash of egos and the clash of personalities that Dr. Thomas just referred to was in some ways counterproductive. I think it's particularly hard for visionary leaders to work together. Actually, things work quite well when they're in competition with each other. So you have, Michael Dell and you have Steve Jobs, and they're visionary in their own domain, and we're all the beneficiaries of that kind of ego competition. Whereas I think within one organization, it really takes extraordinary people skills. And again, my sense from afar, not having read the entire book, is that Steve Jobs lacked some of those people skills, and that maybe there were opportunities. That's putting it politely, isn't it, Mitch? That perhaps Apple would have had even greater success. It's kind of hard to imagine that. Had he been better at managing the human dimension side of this. The Colonel talked about leadership by walking around. And you don't get the sense there was a lot of that he was kind of isolated and difficult to get along with. So I think even from someone as successful as Steve Jobs, that we can learn both positive and negative lessons. We can learn about ways to be and do and ways not to be and not to do. But that's a really provoking question. Thanks.
Or you could do what Abe Lincoln did. He hired his enemies. After he got elected president, he brought them all in. That's one way to do it.
Great book, Dolores Kearns Goodwin, Team of Rivals. Was required reading in the Obama White House in his first 6 months in office, I think for this very purpose. Other perspectives on this?
Yeah, absolutely a great book. I highly recommend it. If you want to read about strategic vision, strategic leadership, read A Team of Rivals. That's an amazing book. But I'll tell you, I'm at NDU right now, National War College, and 225 Type A, Lieutenant Colonels, all battalion commanders and group commanders, and putting 20 of us in a committee room is very interesting on any given day, because you got 20 people who are used to being leaders of organizations, and so simple things like who's going to make the coffee will just be a morning affair for us sometimes. So you really got to work your interpersonal skills, and that's what the gentleman on the right are saying. Really realizing where you are in that particular organization and what you bring to the team, and trying to figure out how to capitalize on everyone's strengths. But it does require a very finessed interpersonal skill level when you're working with that many visionary leaders all in a contained environment. I feel bad for our admiral on any given day. So all with that, sir, you have anything on that?
I don't know. Being a football coach, you always have egos. Everybody on the football team got an ego. Everybody thinks he's better than the other one. Everybody thinks he's an All-American, and everybody thinks he should be playing. And, just try meeting with the parents I'm not saying that you try meeting with the parents. You think the players have egos. Try meeting with the parents, and you see how many egos. You have to listen to people. It doesn't matter who they are and what their skills and skill levels are, but you simply have to listen to them, because you're not going to block a single person on the football team. I'm not. I'm too old to block anybody. They are. Maybe they can tell me how that they can best utilize their skills, and obviously they're going to tell you that they're the best in the world. But my point is, all leaders are leaders because they learn to listen first. And that's the key to being a leader, is to listen. You might learn something.
I'm going to add one more comment. As the coach was talking, I was reminded years ago at National War College, we had a speaker, and we have a not for attribution rule, so I can't say who it was. And he was asked a question, what's the most important characteristic or quality for a strategist or a strategic leader? And he said, empathy. And it really threw everyone for a loop in the room, and he hastened to add, he said, I don't mean sympathy. Empathy, which is the ability to see reality through someone else's eyes. And when he said that, I remembered something that was taught to me by one of my longtime closest friends, who began as a boss and a mentor, whose father had been a labor organizer in Massachusetts. And he said, and my dad always said the best labor negotiators were those who could think like management, because they could empathize, they could see reality through someone else's eyes, whether that's a rival or a competitor or a subordinate or a boss. So I think the quality or the characteristic of empathy is one we don't do enough, I don't do enough teaching about that, because I think it really is an important quality. And I think in a military organization, as the Admiral and the Colonel have said, it tends to be a little bit counterintuitive. I think that some of the poorer leaders I know are the ones who think, well, if I listen to my people, that somehow detracts from my authority. Whereas, in fact, the best leaders I know are quite open and saying, I'm going to listen to my people, and it really enhances your authority as a leader to do so. One of the other programs we ran at the Naval Academy here, and they may still do it, I don't know, was the superintendent hosted dinner for the students who wrote the best essays in NE 203. And we always had an after-dinner speaker, and the very last one that I ran before I went back to NDU was in January of 2006, and our speaker was then Colonel John Toolin, USMC, now I believe he's a Major General. And he looks like a recruiting poster Marine. And the whole theme of his talk that night was he told about 4 anecdotes at various stages in his career, where as a commander he had made a decision, and one of his subordinates came and said to him, well, with all due respect, sir, do you think maybe we should? And I think 3 out of the 4, as he explained it, his subordinates actually had better ideas than he did. And he said, a lot of my success as a commander was creating a command climate, again, I think the Colonel talked about that, where people feel not only feel comfortable, but feel encouraged to come forward with ideas. And if the first person who comes forward, gets shot in the face, no one else is going to step forward and run the risk of getting shot in the face. So I think creating that atmosphere and that climate where people are not only feel comfortable, but feel encouraged to come forward, I think it's challenging. It may be more easier to do in less hierarchical organizations, but the best military leaders I know create that kind of command climate.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
Great advice all around. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Good morning.
Sir.
I'm Andrew Shoup. I attend Lafayette College. I have some issues that I would like to bring up more directly toward you, Coach Boone, but in no way, shape, or form does that eliminate, I would appreciate anything the rest of the panel may have to say about it. Attending a small liberal arts college, we tend to still face some of the diversity issues that you had mentioned early on in your opening comments. And being someone who, I play quarterback on the football team there, and our college is a little bit less than 3% African American, and most of those students who are at Lafayette do play a sport or are a student athlete. And I have grown to have the best relationship that I've come to know to this point in my life with some of those individuals. And I have been subject even to some of the same issues that they might face on a daily basis at a school such as that one. My question would be, as a team leader, and specifically as a football player, how you would go about navigating that type of a situation when you even see issues like this performed in your own locker room and performed in your own team meeting rooms and even in your own classroom at a school like that?
Well, I think my success with the Titans was that we encouraged these young men to talk to one another. By learning to talk to one another, they had an opportunity to understand each other. And they learned to accept the cultures of each other that they had never known before. I spoke in Westminster College in Salt Lake City, and they showed me where they had gotten a high school team to build a brick wall out there on the campus and gave each student a brick. And each student was to paint his own brick and put his own beliefs on that brick about diversity, about inclusion, and they gave each student an opportunity to express not only his negative mentality about diversity, but his positive mentality. But at the end of 30 days, they gave 13 students sledgehammers to tear down all of those negative comments on that wall. And that wall remains today only the wall of positive comments about diversity. But the point that I'm trying to make is, unless you give people an opportunity to talk to one another, how many times have you had an open forum or a town hall meeting at your school where students are allowed to sit and talk and stand up and speak out about issues that they believe in? I've only known one, that's the University of Pittsburgh, and out of that type of forum came, an enlightenment to most students about, because you're shielded from many aspects of racism and discrimination. You're shielded from it. But then we live in the only world where people from every country in the world live. We live in America, where America is the only country in the world where people from every country in the world have come to make their living and live in peace. And therefore, there is not a single one of us here or any place else who can stand up and say, I own the total American experience. We must share our experiences. We must invite people into our sphere of influence that don't look like us, who don't act like us. And I know that, the greatest segregated time in America is during lunch. Black kids are here, white kids are there. They're in their own racial comfort zone. Is anything wrong with that? No. But if you want to be successful, you must learn to invite people into your sphere of influence, and you must do it yourself. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Nothing I say makes sense these days.
Very much so. Very much so. Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense. Anyone else? On the panel?
Got it all.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Sure.
Good morning. My name is Brett Fisher. I'm an assistant professor of leadership studies at Christopher Newport University. May I ask about the general insight that we've heard that leadership is about character. Leadership is somehow about character. And specifically, I would like the opportunity to bring the conversation back to the quality of courage as the specific quality of character. One of the most remarkable things to me about this panel is that we see a number of examples of courage emerge in the speakers. And so there's the courage that shows itself in particular in the midst of wartime, but you might refer to the courage that you see in athletics. Colonel Nethercot spoke about taking risks, being bold. And most interesting to me was Admiral Smith talking about the example of Mother Teresa, who couldn't really do push-ups, but yet somehow had this quality. And so I have two very closely related questions about this. Is there some thread which unifies all of these different examples? That is to say, is there one kind of core idea that makes, let's say, the soul of Mother Teresa similar in kind to the soul of the 16-year-old quarterback or to the 19-year-old soldier in Afghanistan? And the second question is, are there any particular dangers of courage, or from the side of courage, for visionary leadership? And the reason why I ask that, because it sounds sort of counterintuitive, is this, because I think there are clear-cut differences between vision on the one hand and courage on the other. Vision seems to spring from the head, from the eyes. It's about seeing and foreseeing. It seems to be a quality of intellect. Whereas courage to me seems to spring from the heart. It's about, it comes from the spirited part of ourselves, or for the heart. And so is there perhaps a tension between these two things? Is there a sense in which taking risks, being bold, is somehow bad for clarity of vision?
Okay, thanks, Brent. All right, so two questions here. Central issue being courage. What's the thread that brings together people of various backgrounds? And the second one we'll get to later. Let's talk about common threads, perhaps, that you've experienced in your life, in your career, that bring together folks of various backgrounds, enables them to exercise courage in such a way as to further the interest of the organization.
Well, I would think that one of the things that brings, at least in the SEALs and certainly on the ship I was on, is doing the same thing with your people, being able to have a way of sharing experiences. Shared experiences are very powerful, and no matter what you do, the reason that these SEAL classes are so close, they become closer to their teammates there than they do their brothers, because it shares this experience, this tremendously difficult thing. And when you go through and share experiences, no matter what it is, and I'm sure out in Afghanistan, these men and women are as close as they could possibly be. And so shared experiences, but for a leader, shared experiences are very, very important, because you don't have to go out and go to war to have a shared experience. You can walk down the hallway and stop at somebody's desk and say, how you doing today? And that's a shared experience. It might only be 2 minutes, but that makes a difference. Because a big part of being a leader is being able to ensure that the people that work for you have self-esteem. You can't confer self-esteem to somebody. They have to earn it. And one of the ways they do it is by a boss, someone who's a leader, coming and sharing an experience. And just like when I was the admiral, I still parachuted and dove, and I probably didn't have to do that, but what difference did that make? I was sharing an experience with the young petty officers. Say, hey, I just went out playing with Admiral Smith. You can't put a price tag on that, share experiences. And that's one way I think you can do that.
As you were asking a question, I was thinking back, and perhaps I guess the greatest privilege I had while I worked at the Naval Academy was to get to know quite well Admiral and Mrs. Stockdale. And in fact, we hosted them here in late 1999. There's a couple people in the audience were here that evening, I know very well. And reflecting on all of that, 2 years later, I was asked to give a keynote speech at the Stockdale Leadership Symposium at the University of San Diego. And it was intimidating because Admiral and Mrs. Stockdale were on the stage. And I offered a 4-part framework for what I called moral leadership Stockdale style. And I think it at least in part addresses your first question. And the 4 parts are, first, to set a goal of great moral worth, a noble goal, an aspiration. But that's not leadership. The second part, then, is to take active steps to pursue that goal. It's very easy to have a goal, but you really take active, morally worthy steps to achieve that goal. It gets harder as you go along. The third is to be willing to pay a price yourself as you're taking those steps to achieve that goal. And in many ways, I think the fourth is the most difficult, and that is to be willing to ask or even order others to pay a price as you work together to achieve these goals, as you're taking those steps. And it seems to me that morally, it's a package deal. And if you have anything less than all 4, you haven't really measured up to what I call the Stockdale style of moral leadership. I think it's a combination of things. It's one of the points I was going to make as a visionary leader is it's easy to actually have visions. But you do need enablers, and you need other things along the way. I mean, when I was growing up, I had a vision of playing for the Boston Celtics. My problem was lack of height and lack of basketball talent. But it was very easy to have a vision. I could see myself wearing the green uniform and the black high tops, but I didn't have what it took to do that. So if you think about setting goals of great moral worth, taking active, morally sound steps to achieve those goals, being willing to take some risks and pay a price yourself in pursuit of that, and fourth, most difficult, being willing to ask or even command others to run risks and pay prices to achieve that. That seems to me that's sort of the quintessential moral leadership.
Before we jump into the second portion of the question, I would ask, and one of the great unfortunate things that I've got to do as moderator is to kind of call an end to this at some point, because we're kind of out of time. And in the interest of keep on schedule here, if you would please take your seats. Hopefully we'll be able to get an opportunity on the breaks, and as folks are available here for the remainder of the day, be able to field some of these questions. So this will be the last portion. The second question from Brent had to do with what about the dangers of perhaps excess courage, as Aristotle would have told us. You know, all great virtues come in balance, that you can have an excess or a deficiency of them. What if, in the case of excess of courage is witnessed, what is a leader to do?
Okay.
Is that fair enough, Brent? Summary?
Is that good enough? I'm glad you gave us an easy one to end on.
Yeah.
That's great. I'll answer real quick on your first one. As we were talking, and the difference between Mother Teresa and that 16-year-old quarterback, or whether it's a lieutenant in Afghanistan leading platoon, is the only thing I can think of is there seems to be this quiet determination thread that runs throughout all those elements, where that individual really believes in their cause, their journey, their purpose, and that seems to be the only thing that really comes to mind that I've seen. And you see that in young lieutenants who say leadership comes from within and has nothing to do with anything else, meaning it doesn't matter what your race is, your gender, your faith, where you went to college, what your degree is. It really does come from within. So maybe it's just that thread of quiet determination that links that Mother Teresa to that 16-year-old quarterback trying to call that game-winning play. But your second question is, there is a healthy tension. We talked about balance between visionary and the heart, to keep those things in balance, and leadership is all about balance. And I guess that's the best way as I can describe it, is to keep a healthy tension and have that inner circle around you, those advisors we've all kind of talked about, to kind of check and balance you every now and again, because it's an emotional business, it's a people business. So you need those advisors around you to make sure you're staying in balance and not leading with your heart, and totally going off your message or what your organization needs to do. You need those people around you to help bring you in. And you need to do some self-analysis as well and kind of know what your own strengths are as a leader and your own faults are as a leader, so you can kind of evaluate yourself. But yeah, it's a healthy tension and it's a balancing act. And I'll leave it with that and end it with the coach.
You're always putting it on me.
I know. Well, right there.
I spoke to a young soldier January 6th of 2012 in the Brooks Army Medical Center in San Antonio. And I visited the hospital to encourage and motivate these young men to get up and come back to us. And this young man told me a story that I'll never ever forget in my life. He said when his unit was in Afghanistan and one of his people was shot, and the insurgents picked him up and carried him away and was running away like they were going to mutilate him and make an example out of him. And he, with an arm almost blown off, he went after those 3 or 4 guys. He killed all 3 of them, and he brought his wounded soldier comrade back. And he's asked many times, why did you have the courage to do that? He said, and I quote, all of my life since I was born, I've been reminded that we live in the home of the brave, America. And Americans are supposed to do this because it's the emotional glue that binds us together. This is a 19-year-old kid talking with one arm now. And Brooks Army Medical Center, he said he went after those insurgents who was carrying his partner off because an American is supposed to do that. And boy, he put goosebumps all over me. I wanted to go grab my rifle.
will be to the enemy. Okay. Well, it's been a wonderful panel. It's been a great honor to be a part of this. We've been given some great insights, great perspective on leadership, particularly on this topic, this theme of the conference, visionary leadership. The questions were outstanding. Hopefully, all of us will be available, at least for a short time, to field those additional questions that I mentioned before. I, for one, am very eager to participate in some of these breakout discussions and conversations that will result here for the next day and a half, 2 days. So thanks once again, and please join me in thanking the 4 members of our panel today.
Very good.